Harrison Price for Tuesday, May 6, 2025, coming to you from the Nation Network studio, built by Arbor Lee here at the historic Wall Center. In this program, a presentation of Bet365. Matt Harrison alongside Blake Price, four-time Juno Award winner Mike Patterson, hitting switches, conducting things with intern Jaden Tasia. We have a big show coming up for you on this glorious spring Tuesday in the city of Vancouver. Hope you're all getting outside and enjoying the weather. It's a happy day in our household because the kids' pool is reopening here in a couple of weeks. Thank you for that news before we went on air. She's a little grumpy with me right now, so I've just delivered that, and I'm in good stead.
Good.
And we are doing aces today because the sick cat, he finally pooed 4 days later, and we have a bowel movement, which probably means we're not going to have to go back to the vet, and therefore,
we can't wait to see what the chat has to say about that.
Just thought I'd share.
Yeah, thanks.
Well, we're in the time of year where you share.
TMI.
Well, I mean, you sit there for 4 or 5 days looking at a cat that just won't go, knowing that if another day passes, you're back at the vet with those invoices.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get to the poll question. Not a moment too soon.
Yeah, thank you.
Should the Canucks trade the 15th overall pick and Tom Willander for a top 2 center? You can vote yes, you can vote no. Do so at the Harrison Price X and YouTube channels. We asked this question in light of last night's NHL Draft lottery. We'll get more into that in a moment. But as expected, the Canucks did not jump up the 10 spots, did not fall the 1 spot via Calgary winning the lottery. So their pick is right in the mushy middle as we expected, in what is not considered a particularly great draft.
Do you mind not bringing up the mushy middle right after all the poop talk, please? Honestly.
I think you're the only one who drew that parallel.
As Green in the chat says, this show is now in the dumps.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Kind of feels that way. The chat is liking the poop talk, by the way.
Yeah. No, I figured it would play with the chat. You're welcome.
It's going to be a debate for a long time until something happens that removes it from the debate possibility. And I'm not talking poop anymore.
Yeah, I was going to say
back to the poll question.
There was smoke from our chimney this morning.
Wow. Now you've gone conclave on me?
Wow, we've been waiting a long time for this. We were waiting a long time for this.
Honestly. I can't rescue this segment anymore. I mean, I don't know what to do with you. Don't be boring on the poll question and say, depends on the center.
Oh, come on. Nonsense.
Come on. A legitimate National Hockey League second line.
Exactly. Center. A legitimate top 2 NHL centerman, whether they're a young player about to get into big money or they're already paid at market value, that piece is going to be expensive, everybody. Jim Rutherford told us that piece is going to be expensive, but Jim also said, and I think he's right, it would be more expensive not to. Because if you have any designs on contention next year, that is a absolutely necessary piece. And that's even if Elias bounces back and becomes an 80-point player or a 100-point player again.
That just gets you into the playoffs.
That's it. Happens. We saw it 2 years. We saw it last year.
Yeah.
Miller and Paterson. It got you to Game 7, Round 2 against that Oilers team. So we all know the stakes here. That minus that piece, next year's Vancouver Canucks are going to be a hope bet.
Here's the problem with it. There's still the very realistic possibility that Quinn Hughes demands to be traded or just plays out his contract, whichever the Canucks see fit to do. And, hey, Tom Willander and that 15th overall pick would look pretty damn good if that moment does occur. Like, this isn't the greatest draft, but 15 is not a bad draft pick. Canucks have already shown with Lekramaki and Willander that the second set of 10 in the draft can produce some players. Both of those players are promising, not certified yet, but they're promising. And to say no to two of them now, whatever you get at 15 and Willander, man, if you come away in 2 years' time with no Hughes, no Willander, and none of this kid at 15 overall, Matt, you have sunk this franchise deeper into oblivion than they are right now.
Yes, but they know that. They understand the downside.
Yeah, it's a gamble.
They have made the strategic decision that they're going to go year to year, hoping to patchwork a championship contender together without the requisite patience that most championship contenders require.
So
they are a right now immediate gratification franchise. They have been for more than a decade now under Francesco. I voted yes. If you're telling me rebuilds are off limits, and under this owner, rebuilds are off limits, then yeah, that's what it's going to cost.
I'm officially no.
I'm officially yes.
I'm officially no. I think you can get a second line center for this first round pick and something else.
Okay, is that Lekramaki? It's still a significant piece, Blake.
Yes, I would go Lekramaki.
And do you want to rob
Willander
from the NHL team? Because that's more of robbing. That's more of subtracting from Peter.
I'm not convinced Lekramaki's an NHL player yet. So
you're going to go Lekramaki in the first overall. Okay.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to trade a defenseman like Tom Willander. But let's face it. How much impact effect is Tom Willander going to have on next season? Probably not a lot.
No. It's more insurance plan.
Everything goes incredibly well for Tom Willander.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe in the second half of next year, he's playing second pair minutes on the right side. That's a very rosy scenario.
We've seen defensemen jump into the NHL a little quicker than we've expected lately.
Mm-hmm. But there's also the old axiom, it's going to take a young defenseman 200 or so games before they finally realize and become everything they can be.
The sooner you start, the sooner those 200 are done.
Yeah. Well, next year's, alas, is only 82. So, yeah, given the climate, with this organization, with this lot, I think it's 15th overall and one of Willander or Lekramaki to try and get you that top two center. And Lekramaki, I think you could argue, is a more needed piece for next year's team because of the lack of goals and because the need for, as Rutherford said, 3 forwards.
Again, I mean, this team is full of wild cards, full of unknowns, but we are all progressing into next season. I think with the assumption that everybody sort of performs. We've talked a lot about Elias Patterson improving, but I think everybody else just imprints this past season on this coming. And there's no guarantee that Dakota Joshua can't be an 18 to 20 goal scorer again. There's no guarantee that Niels Höglander can't be a 20 goal scorer again. So if you're asking where some of the offense is coming from, they kind of had 40 goals earmarked for those two guys that they didn't get anywhere close to this past year.
Yep. And do the exercise going back to 2 years when Höglander and Joshua combined for 40-some goals. And again, it was round 2.
And so, yeah, there's,
So, yeah, even with bounce backs, you need that top 2 center. You need a minimum one more top 6 player, particularly if Boeser is on the way out.
Mm-hmm.
Boeser and Suter are both out. I think you need 2 on top of the center. Let's get to our top story, brought to you by Yellow Dog Brewing, Neighborhood Brewing, Foolish Winery. I had a couple of Play Dead IPAs last night while watching the hockey. The big beers. I brought them home. She's like, "Oh, you're going with the big beer tonight, are you?" I'm like, "Yeah." Lottery losers again. The Canucks failed to move up from the number 15 draft position. They are one of 5 NHL teams that has never moved up in the draft order.
A tradition unlike any other.
Mm-hmm. While watching 2 teams, the New York Islanders and Utah Hockey Club, jump all the way up and secure the 1st and 4th overall picks. The Islanders win the first lottery with a 3.5% chance of moving up from number 10. Utah wins the second lottery with a 3.2% chance of jumping up to number 4 from 14. Canucks were eliminated on the second ball on the first and second draws. Adam Kierszenblat of the Hockey News has done the math. For the Canucks to have actually had Utah's pick, and he means Utah's number combination, they would have had to lost in regulation to Utah on December 18th, beat Columbus in regulation on March 28th. Had they done that, they would have been on 89 points and lost the tiebreaker with Utah to have the 14th best odds. Of course, it was that number combination that was selected to jump up to number 4. Canucks have had the 15th overall selection once in their history. It was just a few years ago, 2022, and they took Jonathan Lekramaki, who still remains with the organization.
So it was a wild and woolly NHL draft lottery.
It sure was. Great drama. Gotta say, the new TV format, huge upgrade. Huge upgrade. That they had the live odds beside every team, that they were able to stroke teams out and then show you the live odds and the numbered ball that the teams that were still in it required upon the fourth drawing was excellent television in comparison to Bill Daly opening up envelopes. Now,
what a difference for Nashville. Nashville could have
big time.
Could have had the 3rd overall pick.
Well, especially because Nashville is absolutely crying out for center iceman. And at number 3, I think there was a pretty good chance you're going to be able to get James Higgins, the Boston College forward. Now, some people think he might have to move to the wing in the NHL, but he has played at center. Or it's Frondell, the Swedish center. And look, some of these guys may be available at 5. But I think Nashville knew if they're in the top 3, they are going to be able to draft a center who's ranked right around there. Now, there's a lot of centers in this draft. It's kind of got like a second to third line center draft written all over it.
But who can be a true NHL center? That's always the debate.
Right. So as for the lottery show, I thought it was a little awkward with Gary announcing the number on the ball. That was
should have just stopped at Gary. It's a little awkward with Gary.
Well, it's always awkward with Gary, but 1, 2, 7. As every ball got dropped into the hopper, I thought that was a little unnecessary, gratuitous. Also a little awkward that you had that NHL VP standing with his back to the hopper. As Butchagros explained, that's so he doesn't see anything. But you did have a clock running 30 seconds, so he was always going to call for the draw at the expiration of that clock, whether he was looking at the hopper or not. But I guess that's another level of the NHL showing you, look, it isn't rigged. Look, this guy's back is to the hopper. Particularly awkward with Bill Daly and the Ernst & Young, and we had KPMG and PricewaterhouseCoopers, lest we forget, like the official accounting auditing partner of the NHL, Ernst & Young. I thought it was a little awkward with him and Daly just sitting there looking stupid with nothing to do for the most part. And then
they should have been playing bubble hockey against each other in the corner or something like that. We'll call you when we need you.
And look, the other thing that was awkward was the number combination comes up, and then the Ernst & Young guys checks both lists to confirm that it is the Islanders, even though you're sitting there looking. You told us the Islanders needed this ball. That ball came up. It's got to be the Islanders. And then handing a note to Bill, and Bill saying the Islanders. Where was the placard there? You needed the placard there.
This was my worry when this whole thing was announced. Is just we can't be watching admin. Right? Like they have to.
And there was a little bit of admin.
Yeah. You have to streamline that so that maybe it's a little more electronic.
Yeah.
And less admin is shown.
You either needed a placard or you needed the big graphic coming on the screen that it was the Islanders. But hey, their first time in this format, it was absolutely better than previous lotteries. I'm sure they'll tweak and refine as we go forward.
Let's hope.
Here's Dave Hall. We had him on the show yesterday, prospect writer at Canucks Army. There's a good chance that the 15th pick is gone, but assuming it isn't, my wishful pick is Jake O'Brien. He's a young centerman from the Brantford OHL program who has had a lot of helium this year. People like the fact that he's a pugnacious guy who can also score. Dave gives his realistic picks. Brady Martin, a sort of jack of all trades, do everything out there centerman with the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds. He had been a good player for Canada at the World Under-18s. Braden Coots is a centerman just down the I-5 here in Seattle. There are some upside questions there. Is he a third-line center in the NHL? Can he slide into the top? To Ben Kindle, a local kid, Calgary Hitman. Some questions about whether he can hold up at center ice in the pros, but good offensive player, is also right there in the fight, a noticeable guy. And Carter Bear also down the road with the Everett Silvertips. A little bit of question, too, about whether he's going to be a center or a wing in the National Hockey League.
I see a lot of people in the chat talking about Roger McQueen. Stick around.
Yeah,
we got more Roger McQueen coming up with Cam Robinson of Elite Prospects. So he's an intriguing player, but he's got some ghosts around him right
Roger
now.
McQueen is a 6'5" centerman with the Brandon Wheat Kings. He was a consensus top 5 guy at the beginning of this season. He's been hurt and has not played, so that has hurt his draft stock.
He's also busy shooting his third film in the franchise, the adventure film franchise. Doesn't he sound like
Roger McQueen?
Roger McQueen.
He should be James Bond.
Like, that is a name. You can market the name Roger McQueen.
What's his name? Daniel Craig is done playing James Bond.
Yeah.
Right? Have they named the new James? Is it Idris?
He's half Roger Moore, half Steve McQueen.
That's
are
right.
you kidding me? Like, what are we doing here? Make the kid James Bond. Can you imagine the marketing slogan after you've drafted him? The silhouette sort of thing? Oh, so perfect.
But will he return the vehicle in pristine order? The Canucks have the full complement of 7 draft picks for only the second time in the last 6 drafts. That is if, in fact, they hold on to all of these selections. So they are picking 15th overall in round 1, 47th overall in round 2. They have the first pick of the 3rd round, the San Jose Sharks pick at 65th overall. And then 117, which is the Ottawa Senators pick in round 4. And then their indigenous picks in round 5, 6 and 7, 143, 175, and 207. There is also a slight possibility that all of their picks beyond the first round all move up 1 spot, and that is because the Ottawa Senators must forfeit a first-round draft pick in one of the next 2 years, either this year or next year, albeit Steve Staios has giving very strong hints that they're going to keep 21st overall this year and forfeit their pick in the Gavin McKenna draft next year. So taking on some risk there. The Senators are. We're also wondering whether the New York Rangers, and of course this has a Canucks take on it as well. The New York Rangers currently hold the 12th overall selection. They can convey that to the Pittsburgh Penguins if they choose, or they can give the Penguins next year's first-round pick, and this, of course, is a pick that was involved with the Vancouver Canucks, came through Vancouver and to Pittsburgh in the JT Miller and Marcus Paterson deals.
The 3rd-round pick that is the Sharks,
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to keep pounding this, that they need to trade that pick to Montreal for their indigenous 3rd-round pick. Mm-hmm. It means sliding down in the 3rd round. Not ideal. But it keeps the possibility of, and it most certainly keeps the threat of, a pretty high-priced roster or offer sheet in the back pocket of the Vancouver Canucks. You need your own first 3 picks. So you have to call the Montreal Canadiens,
yes,
and get your 3rd round. If you want to flip them something else,
well, no,
a warm body, that's
Blake,
fine. But I would pay the price of sliding down to keep the threat alive and the possibility of execution alive of a real offer sheet.
Blake, their pick in the 3rd round is 79th overall. So you just call the Canadians and you say 65 for 79.
Yeah. Done.
And the Habs go,
well, of course we'll do that.
Of course we'll do that. We're just moving up 14 spots for free.
Yeah.
That's right. Montreal, incidentally, also with picks 81 and 82 in the 3rd round. And if you haven't delved deep on the draft, boy, there are some teams that have absolute bounties The Philadelphia Flyers have the 6th overall pick, the 24th, the 25th overall pick, and then they have 4 second-round selections at 36, 40, 45, and 48. Nashville, aforementioned, 5th overall. They slid down 2 spots. Blake, they also hold pick 26 and pick 30. Montreal has 2 first-rounders back-to-back, 16-17 by virtue of the Calgary Flames. Calgary still has 2 picks of their own at 18 and 22. So on and on it goes here with teams holding San Jose, Chicago, both hold multiple first-round picks. Columbus holds picks 14 and 20. So you have teams that are awash in draft picks, and I suspect in many cases are going to be looking to package a number of these picks for roster players with the cap going up now. And, of course, some teams being a little tired of being in rebuilds that haven't produced a lot of results or fun for
multiple picks, of course, don't always mean everything. Going back to Jake DeBrusk's 2015 NHL entry draft where Boston went 13, 14, 15. Mm-hmm. And they produced one everyday National Hockey League player in Jake DeBrusk. Jacob Zaboral and Zachary Senyshyn.
Right. Senyshyn was like a late rising helium guy who just probably didn't deserve the shine when it was all said and done. So the question now, are the Islanders going to take OHL defenseman Matthew Schaefer 1st overall? Are they going to take one-time exceptional player in the OHL, Michael Misa, 1st overall of the Saginaw Spirit? Or are they going to take the Long Island native, James Haggins, the forward from Boston College, at 1st overall? I was talking with our buddy Eric Curry down in San Jose. The Sharks are very much hoping to get Schaefer out of this. They have Sam Dickinson, the London Knights defenseman, top 10 guy from last year, who looked very good for Canada at the World Juniors. They would love to be able to add another sort of horse anchor zone pair of defensemen.
Well, Matt, the other part of that is Cole Yzerman gets drafted by the Islanders in 2024. He and Haggins have played on multiple teams together growing up. They've got chemistry. You've got a built-in line if you draft Haggins, too.
Yeah, and the other thing is about the Islanders, Callum Ritchie, the centerman they acquired from the Colorado Avalanche in the Brock Nelson deal, is there, not to mention Barzal, Horvat, pretty good centerman already on the NHL team.
Yep.
So it's going to be interesting to see what the Islanders, which direction the Islanders go here with this 1st overall selection, because they don't even have a GM right now. More on that
Tough to make
later
decisions
in the program.
Yeah. Very interesting. We've been telling you about all these new experiences from Yellow Dog. Well, they've got another new experience. This is a new box coming out on Thursday. It's from Neighborhood Brewing, the Good Neighbor Mix Pack. The ultimate sidekick for your backyard hangouts, rooftop sessions, and otherwise. You got the Hot Happy Place Juicy Pale Ale. You got your Wild Card New Zealand Pilsner. And Easy Days Extra Pale Ale. So make sure you've got stuff for your neighbor. Be a good neighbor. And go get yourself the Good Neighbor Mix Pack.
We have some of those offerings coming our way this week.
Woot, woot.
Yep. Brock Boeser, career Vancouver Canuck, longest tenured Vancouver Canuck. He published a Insta reel on his social media account this weekend of photos of this past season. Many Canucks fans are taking it as a sign that he's not coming back, particularly when Connor Garland gets in the replies and says, "Love ya, 6," his number. Our friends at AFP have published their final projections for NHL free agents this summer.
Boy.
You may remember that we have been citing the AFP projections for a couple of years now, but it was very pronounced sort of mid-year this year as we were getting towards the trade deadline and looking at Brock Boeser and looking at where he stacked up with this UFA field, not to mention, of course, accounting for the big jump in the salary cap. So the final numbers on Boeser as AFP sees it, and these are slightly down, Blake, because remember, Brock did not have a good second half.
Still. Oof.
They have him at 6 years and $8.5 million So total value over $50 million. Now, this projection started with the total value of about $64 million because they had him at 7 years and over $9 million per. But the second half dropped the value of that contract. 6 at 8.5. What do you think?
I think there's no chance he signs for something that economical.
With the Canucks or anywhere?
Anywhere.
Really? You think he's getting more than 6 at 8.5?
Yes.
Ooh.
Yeah. And again,
do you think he's going to get the 7 at 9 like the original?
Don't shoot the messenger here. I'm not saying this is what he's worth. I'm saying I think the market, given who's out there as a UFA, I think he gets more than that. I think you signed that Pius Suter deal in a New York Minute. I think you signed that Derek Forbort deal in a New York Minute. I think all those are below what will ultimately happen.
Suter 4 by 4.5. We had wondered, did Pius Suter second half make him a $5 million player? And the answer from AFP right now is no, but
I think so.
On the open market, who knows? Remember, this is the first time in a long time that you've got a large swath of NHL GMs that have money in their pocket, and we know it burns a hole.
I mean, this is the unfortunate part of the Canucks and how deep a hole they're in here and the timing of everything is. I think you'd have Pius Suter back right now if they have a little bit more cap space, if they had a little bit more certainty, if they were comfortable with Elias Paterson, all that. They've got so many unknowns. I don't think they feel comfortable just yet bringing Pius Suter back. But if you had a second-line center as well, you signed Pius Suter 3 weeks ago.
I'm with you. I'm absolutely doing Suter at 4 by 4.5. I am not doing Brock at 6.8. At 6 by 8.
That Forbort deal too. I mean, a
year, 1 year, 1.53.
Sure,
that's like a nothing raise on his current deal.
Yeah.
In fact,
I'm surprised.
It's a $30,000 raise on his current deal. As they project it. Well, I just wonder whether it's
continuity for the player.
Forbort's game does not necessarily translate towards.
No.
Yeah. And also others wondering if Matthew Coronado re-signing at 7 years by 6.5 with the Calgary Flames is going to have an effect on Boeser. He's an RFA, so it's a little bit of apples to eggs. But Calgary committed, I mean, that's a good term for Coronado, to say the least. And pretty good money. Bottom line, I think if you thought Boeser was coming in and around where he's at now or at $7 million, I just don't see that. Well, as our friend White Aren't the Stanchion said, it was like the cherry on top in a season of storylines, narrative, and things that went wrong for the Vancouver Canucks and their parent company, Canucks Sports Entertainment. Yesterday afternoon, the Canucks X account, formerly Twitter, was hacked. It started posting crypto scams and deepfake Elon Musk memes. Whoever hacked it seemed to have a little bit of fun getting into the replies as well.
That's something else.
And of course, the internet had jokes. Canucks Twitter, it had jokes. Jim Leahy, if you guys think this Canucks crypto scam is bad, they tried selling me they were a playoff team this year.
Very good.
Sean Shapiro, creative ways to fund Wielander's bonus. Crypto earnings. Sam, the Canucks didn't get hacked. Someone just let Jim Rutherford take over the socials. And Meek, how the fuck do you hack the Canucks and not announce a fake trade? Yeah, that's what I was sitting there waiting for. I was waiting for a graphic of Boeser re-signed or a trade made.
Can you imagine?
I don't think they were the biggest hockey fans based on the evidence at hand.
No, can you imagine the clicks that they would have got on their, who knows, virus-laden link if they had done that? If they had done that and then at the bottom of that tweet put a link to whatever scam they had.
Oh, my goodness. If it was positioned as a news release when it was really a crypto scam?
Matt, they didn't even have to do any graphics. If they just typed it out, Canucks trade, blah, blah, blah. The thing would have done numbers.
Absolutely.
Opportunity missed. Oh, well, next time. You beat the firewall once, you'll probably be able to beat it again.
My. And the Canucks, when they caught wind of what was happening, they put a message up on their Instagram account saying they are working with the platform and the NHL.
Gary.
No, exactly. That's like, oh boy, we got to call the head office. Look what's happening. Gary's going to be some ticked. But the NHL head office, if it is good at something, it's leaning on people. We'll get them to lean on Elon.
By the way, really hope no one got scammed on anything as a result.
People were out there saying, don't click the links. I mean, it goes without saying. But.
Yeah. So hopefully you're all okay.
Abbotsford practice today, back at practice after their opening 2 games in Coachella Valley in the AHL second round series. Jonathan Lekramaki is back and looking good. Suspect he will play in Game 3. He had been recovering from complications of dental surgery.
I think we need this storyline. We need somebody in the prospect corral. And Max Sassen's been good, but he's an older prospect, right? Like, he's not the belle of the ball here. You need a Ratu. You need a Lekramaki. Somebody to be like, okay, I'm big time here. Score some goals.
Yep.
Need it to happen.
Or if the veterans get you through this series, then there's more opportunity for the prospects to shine in round 3.
Yeah, for sure. I'd like them to be a part of this.
Yeah, again, Mancini's been excellent. Excellent. Not getting on the score sheet every night, but Mancini and Kudryavtsev, very good. It's the guys that you hope score some. Lekramaki, Ratu, Sassen have gone a little quieter.
I know they got a lot of bodies, but why wasn't Elias Patterson down there? You know, why didn't you paper him?
Well, because he's an NHL player now.
I mean, is he that much more pedigreed than the other guys that like the Nachuratu?
Based on how they used him, yes. Stanley Cup playoffs, round 2 is underway. The Toronto Maple Leafs have a 1-0 series lead over the defending Cup champion Florida Panthers, although by the hairs on their chinny chin. Goaltender Anthony, and already a fiery series.
How many goaltender spotter polls have there been, or so goaltender? I think it's 3, isn't there? In the playoffs already?
Anthony Stolarz, he takes a shot to the cage. And then he takes a forearm from ex-Panthers teammate Sam Bennett. They won a cup together last year. A clear concussion there, the shaking of the head, the vomiting. And Chris Johnson reported he left the arena on a stretcher, Blake. So this is pretty serious news for the Leafs, who look very much like they've lost their starting goaltender for, I think, at minimum, game 2.
I mean, if you're concussion, it's protocol. It's a week. Like you're on a week.
We'll see how
they bend those rules.
Yeah. Bennett did he reached out to Stolarz in the aftermath of course, ex-teammates. Look, I didn't love the play from Bennett, but I felt the concussion was the result of the shot. I mean, that might have exacerbated. I know many in Leafs Nation are up in arms about no supplemental discipline. I could have easily had a penalty there, but I didn't necessarily.
If you're outraged at that, my goodness, I've got 1,200 other plays in the NHL to show you.
And Paul Maurice was saying as much with the Panthers in his post-game last night.
I mean, I'm ready. I'm not a massive Sam Bennett.
It's just the Toronto factor, Blake. When Toronto cries, it cries louder.
I like to cry about rats playing in the game too. I do. Cheap shots piss me off too. I can't, even though it's Sam Bennett, who certainly has a reputation.
Yeah.
I can't find the egregious act there.
No, I can't find the suspension.
No.
Put it that way.
No.
If you wanted to fine him, sure, but that's not affecting the competitiveness of the series.
No.
Vegas, Edmonton tonight, and Blake and I don't agree on much, but we agree on this. Our favorite out-of-market game to watch is Vegas and Edmonton. They have played some outstanding games even in the regular season. They play outstanding games. They've played some humdingers in the playoffs as well. Calvin Pickard. And look, great story. Seems like a fine, great story. You admire his persistence, his perseverance of sticking with it all these years, particularly as a pure backup, which is what he has been in NHL regular seasons. But this is the second straight year where he's earning starts in the Stanley Cup playoffs. I am still not feeling secure about the Oilers' ability to keep the puck out of their net. And I know Vegas is missing some guys, but I am hedging Vegas here. I just want to see some great hockey, though, and these two teams are capable of putting it on. I think you can argue the best collection of defensemen 1 through 6 in the NHL, Vegas, against the best collection of top 6 forwards in Edmonton. Styles make fights, and this one is terrific if you're in neutral.
And I think there's goals. As much as it's big boy hockey, I Aiden Hill and Calvin Pickard, due respect to both of them, I think they're both penetrable.
Yeah,
so.
Washington, Carolina is going to really have to earn my attention.
Yes.
I'm just going to say that right now. Luckily, it's standalone, the early game, so I will wind up watching some of it. But
that's going to be the series.
If I'm making a choice, it's Vegas, Edmonton.
That's going to be the series that in a week
Toronto,
I'm going to be like,
Florida.
oh, it's 3-1 so-and-so, huh, in the series? I'm going to be surprised at whatever it is after 4 games.
Yep. Front office movings about now in the NHL. Rob Blake is out as LA Kings general manager. Kevin Adams is staying in Buffalo, according to a local report. First of all, on Rob Blake, he had been telling people around the league that he was going to step down after the season. He's done the job for 6-7 years now. And this really amounts to a guy who made a ton of money in his playing career and doesn't need the hassle. And we've talked about this with coaching candidates now amongst the more recently retired NHL guys. They've got so much money, they don't need to coach. So you're only going to get the guys who want to coach, and we're seeing this in the managerial ranks as well. As for Adams in Buffalo, the subtext there that not many in hockey media talk about, because Gary doesn't like these things to be talked about, and Gary wields enormous influence over those who have access in hockey media. Terry Pegula is trying to sell that team. His wife, Kim Pegula, has fallen ill. She requires a lot of care. This wasn't the plan for the Pegula family because he's older than her, and the idea was she was going to take care of him, but he's wound up having to spend a lot of time taking care of her. They also own the Buffalo Bills. That is the priority in their sports portfolio. So Kevin Adams remains as Sabres general manager simply because ownership does not want to saddle a potential buyer with a hockey executive in a long-term contract. They want to give them the opportunity to clear the decks if that's their choice, or continue on the plan. Not that I mean, who would continue on the plan with Kevin Adams and the Buffalo Sabres, who have missed the playoffs for a decade.
Also, it's just something to do that you don't want to do right now when you're dealing with everything else. So it's,
yeah, he would have to go find, yes.
On the Kings, there's a huge opportunity, and this is bad news for the Canucks, in that there's a lot of great pieces to that LA Kings team. And some GM is going to walk in there, and if they are astute enough, is going to be able to make a change here, a change there, sort of a la Mike Gillis coming in and taking over the Canucks when he did. I think they might be a couple of moves away from being a very, very good team that will annoy the Canucks for years to come. One other bit of news. We had this yesterday when Andrew Burnett was given the vote of confidence, and David Carl news that he was staying in Denver. Jared Bednar has been given the 100% vote of confidence in Colorado. He is 100%, quote unquote, going to be the head coach next year for the Avalanche. And there was
I saw Dollywall musing that he might get fired.
Denver Post op-ed calling for his ousting.
Yeah. As for
a lot of talent to be flushed in the first round.
As for Blake and the Kings, I've seen him get a lot of praise here for the job he did. I'm not as fussy on the job he did as others.
Well, they didn't get past the
Dubois trade was they had 4 cracks.
Yeah.
The Dubois trade was an unmitigated disaster. Okay, you salvaged it this year because Kemper came in and played fantastic. The Brock Faber deal was also disastrous. I know Fiala had a better year, but I felt like they go back a few years. I'm not sure there was a team with a better young collection of talent than the Los Angeles Kings. And I thought the idea was that all those young guys were going to grow up together, kind of like the roadmap they followed when they won their 2 Stanley Cups, right? A bunch of homegrown in-house guys who grew up together and turned into one of the the best team in the NHL for a couple of seasons, or at least a couple of postseasons. The 8th seed one year. I thought they got a little bit impatient. I thought they pushed the button on a couple of guys who were the wrong guys. Byfield has moments where he is absolutely spectacular. I completely understand why you took him. I completely understand why you hang on to him. I still think he has an exceptionally bright future. I'm a little less sure about Brandt Clark, the first-round top 10 defenseman they have there. He looks like he might just be an offensive guy that requires sheltering. And then they had some other young players who didn't really, Alex Turcotte being one of them, who have not yet launched. That all said, it is a more attractive job, I think, for potential GMs than, say, the New York Islanders, where Kenny Holland is said to be the favorite. Former Montreal Canadiens boss Marc Bergevin also involved there, and the Islanders have asked the Canadiens for permission to speak to Jeff Gorton, their president of hockey operations, which would mean Kent Hughes is the one and only there in Montreal hockey decision maker. Gorton would be moving on back to the U.S. He's a Boston guy. And then one other thing on the managerial side, Ryan Bowness, the associate general manager of the Ottawa Senators, has been let go. He worked with Rutherford and Alvin in Pittsburgh, and he is, of course, the son of Rick Bowness, former Canucks assistant and longtime NHL head coach.
Tracks.
Oh, also, Bergevin is a candidate in L.A. because him and Luke Richardson are close, and Luke Richardson, the president of the Kings, will be chief amongst making that call. Bergevin is a bit of a wild card, though.
He's
an odd guy.
Some people think he's hysterical and a lot of fun, but he's also made some wild decisions in hockey,
I
too.
had somebody said to me yesterday, I think there might be ownership groups out there that look at Marc Bergevin and think that's a walking HR violation.
Yes. Yeah.
In part because of his sense of humor. All right, let's get to today's menu. It's brought to you by Greta, a fantastic spot to catch all the games, home and away, pregame, postgame, your steps from the arena and stadium. They have an amazing arcade. I mean, intermission, halftime, it's the place you want to be. The food is spectacular. The poutine, decadent. The smash burger, delicious. And they have weekly drink specials, 50 West Cordova. Greta, let the games begin.
You know what I also like about Greta? I've never waited to go to the bathroom.
Yep.
Great facilities.
Fantastic facilities. Single occupant facilities. There's got to be like 12 of them.
More. Yeah. 20.
Yeah. I mean, it's a whole row of them.
Yeah.
If you got to nip out during a short commercial break and come back to the game, as we did often during the Four Nations, didn't want to miss a minute of that.
I apologize, more toilet talk, but it needed to be said.
Yeah.
Good facilities.
Yeah, very bathroom theme to today's show.
I don't think my cat doesn't use the bathroom. There are cats that do.
Honestly, we would have been happy if this cat dropped it in the middle of a bed. It had been 4 days. We were sitting there looking at him. Carmen's like just rot. She's like, there could be something wrong with him beyond what we just fixed at a cost of $7,000. You know, what if we have to bring him back? What if this is a bigger stomach matter than just what we were told? Anyways, it was a glorious morning. Okay. Oh, Bet365 time. Now, I took on a future yesterday, Blake, so I'm going to give you the honor here and let you go where you want to go. This segment proudly brought to you by Bet365, secure some price partner. We're absolutely delighted to have them aboard. Where are you going? What you like?
I took a future as well. I'm going on that early game today. I'm going to look at the late game, though. And you know who shows up when big games are happening? Mark Stone shows up.
He sure does.
Anytime goal scorer. He knows that all the eyes, every hockey fan's watching this one because they know it's big boy hockey. Mark Stone shows up in big boy games, plus 190.
I'm going on the same game here in my mouth. This may be a bridge too far for Calvin Pickard. The Oilers tend to start series slow and get themselves in a pickle before pulling out of it. This isn't the shook LA Kings that you're playing after their coach plays with a mindless coach's challenge on goaltender interference, which completely shifted the momentum of that series. And in fact, we should mention with that Kings general manager opening, does the new guy want to inherit Jim Hiller and listen to
Nope.
I don't like the future there for the Port Alberni head coach. I think he's a good coach. I think he had a good year, but that was just a fireable offense, and I think the new boss is going to move on that. So here I am with Vegas. I like them to win by 2.
Ooh.
Empty netter, or they just flat blow Edmonton out of the building, and they are at home. And that's plus 185. That's good value to win by 2. Those are our Bet365 bets of the day. Want to get in on the action for the Stanley Cup playoffs at Bet365? They got you. Game props, player props, totals, money line. You can bet futures, series winners, conference champion, Stanley Cup champion. So much more. Whatever your bet, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Download the app, get in on the game. An official partner of the Stanley Cup playoffs. Must be 19 or older. Jeff Patterson coming up next. Harrison Price coming to you from the historic Wall Center.
And your local Pacific Toyota dealers want to make sure that you could drive here, there, and everywhere without stopping to fill up the tank with gas. Wouldn't that be glorious? Well, you can do that now in the BZ4X, the latest addition to the fabulous, decades-old electric lineup from Toyota. It performs just like every Toyota does, spectacularly. Go take one for a test drive. You'll feel it yourself. And now with $6,500 in rebates and incentives, 0.99% APR financing over 36 months, there's never been a better time to go visit your Pacific Toyota dealers. ShopToyota.ca.
Always a good time to talk to Jeff Patterson, our Canucks reporter, the host of RinkWide Vancouver. They'll be back at it tomorrow after the Abbotsford Canucks and Coachella Valley in Game 3 of their AHL Calder Cup Series. Good morning, good afternoon, Jeff.
Hi, guys.
You've covered Adam Foote for the last 2.5 years at the hip of Rick Tocchet. What do you make of Foote as a Canucks coaching candidate?
Yeah, I can't say that I know the man particularly well. That's just the world we live in now. The Canucks have a few voices, and I think when Rick was away at the Four Nations, Adam stepped in and did a few media availabilities, but otherwise very much at an arm's length. But I'm well aware of the career that he carved out for himself. And know his background, the 1 year that he coached in the Western Hockey League, by all accounts. So we can't read a whole lot into that just based on where Kelowna was in its competitive cycle. That said, for the group out there, and it's a sizable one that hated the fact that the Canucks chipped and chased and didn't generate a whole lot of shots, look, Adam Foote is as much a stay-at-home defensive defenseman as they come, and I don't know about his offensive philosophies, but that's the way he played the game. He has been in charge of the Canucks defense, and I think by all accounts, and certainly to my eyes, he's done a pretty solid job bringing along some of the players and the overhaul that they had on the blue line. But, how does he approach attacking the game? I don't know a whole lot about his philosophies. That said, I do know that he played with some of the most gifted offensive players of his era on those stacked Colorado teams, so hopefully he has picked up a thing or two along the way there. Look, I'm not surprised. We know that Quinn Hughes has sung his praises repeatedly. I think, and much like Tocchet, like there's just an instant respect factor based on the career that he had at the National Hockey League level. But that said, he hasn't had the keys to the car to be a head coach in the National Hockey League. And so there are a lot of people that sort of fear the idea of Manny Malhotra making the jump because he hasn't been an NHL head coach. Well, the same applies then to Adam Foote. So there's pros and cons. I'm not surprised to hear these reports that he's going to get a long look from the Vancouver Canucks, but I in my heart of hearts, I don't see him as the front runner at this point, but they're not consulting me in these matters.
Well, it begs the question, Jeff, do you think they could sell a first-time NHL head coach?
I think they could sell the right one. Yeah. I think there are a lot of people that would get behind Manny Malhotra based on his time here as a player, the relationships that he has forged, the fact that he began his coaching career under Travis Green and some apprenticing there, went to Toronto, the two of the hottest NHL markets in terms of spotlight and attention and scrutiny and all that. And now the job that he's done down in Abbotsford, I guess it depends on the direction that the club is going to go. I think I could sit here and make a pretty strong case for Manny Malhotra to be the guy to bring along some of the younger players from Abbotsford and grow into the job at the National Hockey League level. But is that what the organization wants? Is that what the ownership wants at this stage? We get a sense that no, that they don't want to be patient. They want to snap their fingers and think that they can be contenders again. Where have I heard that before with this group a few times over the years? So, I think this idea of experience, how could you look at Adam Foote and say this guy doesn't have the applicable experience to be a head coach? I don't think you could. And I think the same goes for Manny Malhotra at this stage. And, I wrote a piece at Canucks Army over the weekend, the four longest tenured head coaches, and I get that we've had this conversation about what does that mean in today's NHL, but the four longest head coaches in their current jobs are all first-time guys. John Cooper, Jared Bednar, Rod Brindamore, and Martin St. Louis. And, of course, St. Louis took the most unique path to getting his job as a National Hockey League head coach. And then Spencer Carberry, who is going to be, he's the presumptive head coach or coach of the year this year. He's a first-timer as well. So it goes to show it really is about getting the right guy for the job. And that's, I think, where the Canucks are right now and whittling down a longer list, a short list that they'll really dive in. But I just think because of the churn now, this notion that you have to have an experienced guy. Just Peter Lavlet, for example, he won his Stanley Cup 19 years ago. And yes, it earns him this cachet of being a Stanley Cup winner. You can never take that off his resume, but 19 years ago, he won the Stanley Cup. Is he better suited for this Canuck job than a first-time guy? Impossible to know. But I don't think that the Canucks should be scared off by this notion of, he's a first-time guy, therefore he can't be our guy in this moment.
Yeah, it's a delicate balance, isn't it? When you look at you've got some outlier success stories like Marty St. Louis that you mentioned, but for the most part, you do like to have somebody that has had a chance to be the head man. You have a very mediocre junior year with the Kelowna Rockets for Adam Foote. Does that tell you anything? That's now 5 years old, 5+ years old. Do you hold that against him? But you're also making Quinn Hughes happy. I don't know, you can talk yourself into a spiral here.
Right. And I think they've got to be careful of that because you can go round and round and round. And ultimately they have to, the music stops and you got to make a decision, right? It gets to that. And so that's where the due diligence comes in. Again, the Kelowna thing, I don't know the full backstory there. I don't know why it was one and done, but it was, and it wasn't a terribly successful year, but sometimes that's just the nature of the beast in junior hockey. The kind of players that you get. I thought Jeremy Colleton would... I don't know if I thought he was going to get a chance here in Vancouver, but I still think Jeremy Colleton will be a head coach again in the National Hockey League at some point. I think they do run the risk, if they go elsewhere, that Manny Malhotra is going to get hired. He'll get a shot to be a head coach in the National Hockey League, especially if he continues to do the good things that he's doing down in Abbotsford. The organization runs the risk of having him bolt if they elect to go elsewhere. And that's, that may be a decision that they make, but I also think that they have to keep that in mind. And, you got to be careful when you have good people. I mean, this has been a big problem for the Vancouver Canuck organization for the last little while, is why can't they retain good people? And I think there are various reasons and various answers to that question. But I think Manny Malhotra is a good person. I think he's doing a really nice job down in Abbotsford. He's got a chance here to deliver a lengthy playoff run that's going to get the attention of the hockey world. And I think at some point he'll get his opportunity. If it's not here, if this isn't his time right now, I do think that unless there's more churn and Manny's prepared to be patient, I think they run the risk of losing him to another organization at some point here.
Last week I set out the case for Peter Lavlet for you. Let me give you the flip side here. Canucks were willing to go 5x5 on Tocchet. Now, I'm not sure they're willing to go 5x5 on Lavlet.
No, I wouldn't guess that.
Jeff, if you want to quibble with that, then by all means, quibble. But if they're not willing to buck up for Lavlet, does that mean they go cheap? I mean, there's been a lot of talk about money and lack of spending right now in the organization. And if they go cheap, does that put them squarely into the first-time head coach pool?
Yeah, probably. And maybe not solely first-timers. Like maybe they do get a second-time guy.
Colleton, that sort of profile of guy.
Yeah, I mean, whether it's a Jay Woodcraft or, who knows, but like a guy that can't command top dollar,
right,
and the conversation can't start there, and the candidate would have to know that coming in. So, and look, I think they laid it pretty clear. Rick Tocchet was their guy, and they wanted to move heaven and earth to keep him, and therefore they were able to get the approval of ownership to make the offer they did. But that's not a pool of money that's now just sitting there burning a hole in an office at Rogers Arena. Like, I don't think it's earmarked for the next guy. I think it was pretty unusual circumstances that they had to buck up and make that offer to Tocchet. He opted to walk away. But, I think that was a positive. To me, that I took that as positive. For all the examples that we've had here of late of an unwillingness to spend, I was at least glad to hear that money wasn't going to be an object to retain Rick Tocchet if Tocchet had elected to keep the job. But it wouldn't surprise me if that does play into it now that as they look, maybe they do keep a price tag in mind here as they try to find their next guy.
You mentioned Woodcraft. Merrick mentioned him on Friday, and in fact, it was more than a mention. It was an endorsement. He thought the fit was terrific for Jay Woodcraft here in Vancouver. It generated a ton. I mean, we're sitting here on Monday going, look at all the people feeding back on this Woodcraft clip.
Oilers stink hangs around for a lot of people. It was polar opposite sort of reaction. In some cases, if Jay Woodcraft gets a save, like he's still the head coach of the Edmonton Oilers. And the flip side was this guy couldn't win with McDavid and Draisaitl, so why would we want him here? How does Woodcraft strike you as a candidate here?
I guess I come at it from divisional knowledge can't be a bad thing. Like Jay Woodcraft would have had to prepare for the Vancouver Canucks for a number of games. He'd have a pretty good sense of the personnel. Does that give him a leg up in terms of some of the other candidates? I'm not sure, but knowledge isn't necessarily a bad thing in that regard. I do sort of, I side with the idea of some goaltending there. We always hear about great goaltenders make great coaches. He and others that have rolled through Edmonton haven't benefited from a whole lot of saves. So I always believe, and Travis Green's a recent example, but guys are generally better at the job the second time around. There's a lot of learning. And so maybe this comes back to this idea of, do you really want a first-timer right here, right now? But I would think that Jay Woodcraft would be a whole lot better National Hockey League head coach getting a second opportunity than he was the first time around. That's not to say that he's going to get to work with better players ever than he had in Edmonton. But I just think just years on the job, picking up all the subtleties and the nuances that go on in the game and around the game, you're better off for it. And I think that it's sort of across the board. I think that's fairly universal for most guys that get a second opportunity.
Experience in a Canadian market and experience in an expectant market. And that's unfair for him for taking over a Canucks team potentially, because It may not be that great a team, but the fact that he can deal with the expectation questions from media and fans, I mean, that's to me, that's something to be considered at the very least. They don't win the draft lottery, alas. So it's the same old for them. It's the expected slotting.
Did you miss our draft lottery on location show yesterday, Jeff? I know you participated in some of those.
Would you have shown up to Greta to spin the wheel? Would you have done that, or would you have been like, guys, no?
Well, I think I jinxed them the one year I brought the replica Stanley Cup, and that right then and there was probably a mistake.
How dare you?
But didn't I think somebody ate Lucky Charms out of the replica Stanley Cup.
That would have been good, too.
Okay.
And that didn't work.
Still didn't.
Yeah, look, I missed the draft lottery show. I mean, it does kind of wear on you. You don't want to be involved in too many draft lottery shows in succession. But look, we dump on the NHL on the regular. Credit where it's due. The lottery show itself was terrific.
It was way better. It was awesome.
And it's wild that it took them that long to figure out that, yes, you could do a live draw and everything would be okay. And it was. And it felt so much better than, the flipping of the cards and the 10 old hockey men sitting there in their seats. So, good on the NHL. They got that one right. And I'm all right with the Islanders winning. Like, I like a little drama. I like a little upheaval in all of that. It would have been better had the Canucks. And look, for the question of will the Canucks ever win a Stanley Cup, nobody knows the answer to that. But will they ever win a draft lottery? Like, could we ever just move in the right direction once in a draft lottery? Alas, that seems like Canuck luck as well. But
it's important, though. It's important, though, for teams like the Islanders to win it every now and then because it does stave off the tanking. You need proof of concept that just because you sink to the bottom doesn't mean you're going to get the top pick overall. And so there was that warning shot there with.
Especially pertinent given Gavin McKenna next year.
Yes, that's true. The Canucks need both. They need a young center in the system, but they also need a center in the NHL. So, which is this 15th pick?
Yeah, it's funny. I was just looking back. I mean, every draft is different in its own beast, but if history tells you anything, you can land pretty good players at 15. They got Lekar-Mackey not that long ago. JT Miller, remember him? He was a 15th overall pick, as was Erik Karlsson. Going back a little further, Joe Sakic was a 15th overall selection. So you never know. That said, there are also a lot of 15th overalls that I can't remember, and I looked at the list not that long ago. So that kind of just speaks to the volatility of the National Hockey League draft. It's said to be pretty top-heavy and drops off pretty quickly after the top 5 this year. So how much value does the 15th overall have in this draft? If you're looking at dealing it, I don't think it has a ton in and of itself. Like, certainly the 15th overall isn't going to land you what you're looking for, so then it becomes a package. And how much do you want to package? How much are you willing to package if you're the Vancouver Canucks? And I know you guys are asking that in the poll question, and when I saw that, I tried to wrap my head around this idea of the 15th overall pick and Tom Willander, and I just kind of come back to, like, what are we doing here? This just feels like them chasing their tail, that, shipping out more draft capital to, and these are always difficult with the hypothetical of not knowing, right? Like, if you could tell me that they could replicate the JT Miller trade of not that long ago, then sure. But, without knowing what's coming in return, it makes it a little more difficult to assess and analyze. But I'm worried. Like, I get this idea of keeping Quinn happy and trying to build around Quinn Hughes. And, again, we're back to this. If everything goes right, and Thatcher Demko's healthy and can be a difference maker, all those things. And they might happen for the Vancouver Canucks. But keeping pretty close tabs on Abbotsford here in this playoff run, guys. Like, if you're going to trade the 15th overall this year and the guy that was the 11th overall a couple of years ago, it puts so much pressure on the system to develop the 3rd and the 4th and the 5th round picks into National Hockey Leaguers. And history tells you that that's just not going to happen very often, that they've done pretty well with Elias Pettersson. And Kirill Kudratsev looks like an absolute outlier and steal to get a guy that's already played NHL games from the 7th round of his draft. But, like, how can you truly build a contender on the backs of 3rd and 4th and 5th round draft picks? You can't do it. And so to continue to pedal away the top of the draft, just, I don't know, feels like a fool's game to me, but that's kind of where they are. They're caught in the middle, and to get out of that. You got to give to get. I get all of that, but boy.
And yet it all might be for naught, Jeff, because what you've said is completely correct. But they are trying to keep Quinn Hughes engaged and wanting to be a Vancouver Canuck. And in the end, they could spend this capital, this draft capital, and it's still not enough for Quinn Hughes, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think just to kind of double down on that, if Quinn Hughes elects to walk away and you have traded Tom Willander,
and the first-round pick. Oh.
How many years did this organization wait to find its own homegrown right-shot defenseman? And I know Quinn's a lefty, but again, I just think that's one of the real perils in all of this. And nobody's got the crystal ball. We don't know how it's going to play out. But, this Abbotsford run, and it's only 5 games right now, but it has the potential to be a true playoff run. But for me, guys, it would be so much more meaningful and significant if it was Jonathan Lekkerimäki scoring every night, if it was Tom Willander patrolling the defense and Elias Paterson was down there. With all due respect to Phil DiGiuseppe, this isn't great for business if Phil the Thrill is the guy. He's got 4 points in the 5 games so far, and he's doing his thing. But for the long-term growth and for marketing purposes and all of that, you'd love to see this playoff push on the backs of the prospects, the legitimate, the top-end prospects, and neither Elias Pettersson or Willander's there, and Lekkerimäki hasn't played the last 3 games, and so that's a little, I don't want to say disappointing, because they're in good shape coming home from Palm Springs with a split, but I just think it would be so much more meaningful and significant if those were the guys that were really driving this playoff push right now and were the guys that this fan base could latch on to at the AHL level and then hopefully all graduate to the NHL.
Speaking of Abbotsford, Jeff, you'll be back at it tomorrow with Dave Hall. What are you expecting out of Manny Malhotra's charges in a 1-1 series at this point?
Yeah, a little concerned about attrition, and information's hard to come by, especially when they're on the road. But Jet Wu left after 2 minutes in Game 2, took a serious shot against the boards and was out of the game. So, high praise for the 5 guys that stayed and played a ton because the game needed a few minutes of overtime. But I'm curious to see who's available because Christian Wolanin has been out for a little while as well. So all of a sudden now you're down 2 fixtures on the back end. And then up front, Atu Ratu left after the second period, and he has not had a particularly good start to these playoffs in terms of being the dominant force and a productive player. And so I'm not sure what the nature of his injury was. And of course, Lekkerimäki, as we said, complications from dental surgery, but guys, it's been 10 days now, and he's played with the bubble, and then he was seen practicing without the bubble. I think that, again, it's hard to get info, but my hunch is that they won the opener down in Coachella Valley, and Manning just decided to come back with a winning lineup, and that meant that Lekkerimäki had to sit for Game 2. But with a few days here to continue to recover and heal up, I hope that he is ready and available and gets back in there and can pick his game up a little bit because he hadn't played particularly well even when he was in the lineup. That said, they got the split they were looking for down in the desert, and so this is much like the first round now where it becomes a best of 3 with the remaining games all out in the Fraser Valley. They're still in the driver's seat, but Coachella Valley was a little more physical. Their better players showed up better than they had in the opener, and so unfortunately for Nikita Tolopilo, coughed up the puck on the winner there, got a little spooked behind the net. But I will say this, I mean, we're all watching Manny now through a sort of different lens because he's a candidate for the big league job. I thought he did a terrific job under the circumstances. Makes the goaltending switch after a bit of a shaky start for Artur Silovs, and switched his line combinations when they were down 3-0. And credit to Abbotsford for chipping away and coming all the way back. Had a 4-3 lead with 4 minutes to go. It's unfortunate they couldn't get that across the finish line, but as I said, they're in pretty good shape as long as they're healthy enough. I don't think they want to lose any more players, but they should have enough in the stable there to get this job done.
And you wonder a couple of things. Number one, if Manny is interviewing here in the break that they've had between games 2 and games 3. And then secondly, if Manny wins this series, is it Manny's job to lose going forward? Awesome stuff, Jeff. We'll be watching, listening tomorrow, and we'll catch up with you on Friday.
Sounds good, guys. Thanks.
Harrison Price from the Historic Wall Center.
And Matt just made a critical amateur golfer mistake. He declared on his way to the golf course later today that he's going to play well today.
I might be in for a number today. I have these new irons. This is like round 3 or 4. I've hit them pretty good. My putting was excellent last week. If I can just get it off the tee and in the fairway, it might be a good day.
Expectation is the mother of all disappointment. And
visualization.
for that reason, I think Matt should load up with some bogey juice.
That would generate some visualization as well.
It's just safer to have it on hand. You can buy it in individual servings to share with your friends when you're out on the course. You can buy it in a big bottle, have it with some ice and soda, and have a great cocktail. Ginger, apple, top shelf vodka. It is so yummy. It's your new spring and summer tradition. Get to bogeyjuice.com. Use the code SP15. You'll get 15% off. Don't be the guy that gets birdie juice into his bag. It's old. It's been there for a long time. Have bogey juice.
Very rarely required in our foursome. Speaking of top shelf, here's Cam Robinson, the director of content and film scouting for Elite Prospects, back from Texas in the World Under 18s. And we're going to move a little bit up the ladder here and talk about older prospects in a second. Cam, how are you?
I'm doing well. Yeah. Survived the trip home. Yeah. Taking a couple days here. Was out sanding and painting my back deck yesterday. Got the first sunburn of the year.
I was just saying, this good weather allows us to do stuff right now.
Blake is getting so much done around his house, around his sister-in-law's house, till 8:30 at night. He's a worker bee.
It's true. It's true.
Not a guy.
Okay, so we're going to ask about prospects at 15th overall, but the big question here, Cam, and particularly we've discussed it the last couple of weeks on Tom Willander, still unsigned, looks very much like this is setting up for a trade. We know they need a top 2 center. We know Jim Rutherford has said it's going to be expensive, but it'll be more expensive not to get one. Package time, brother. It's our poll question. Willander and the 15th overall, should they move those assets for a top 2 center?
Can I just say this first?
Yes, please.
I had a little birdie in my ear say, maybe not all doom and gloom on the Tom Willander front. That, he didn't make the Worlds. Didn't make the Worlds.
Right.
But, obviously Patrick Alvin, Jim Rutherford, they got their plate full right now. They've got to find a coach. I think that's priority number 1, obviously. But it wouldn't shock me if when we're talking next week that he's signed.
Really?
So I'm just, it wouldn't shock me. It wouldn't shock me. Let's just say that, okay? Now, do they trade him with that 15th overall pick? I think if we're putting betting odds onto it, I think that would be like plan A for them and how to solve that 2C hole. Now, is that a good idea? Depends on who the center is, I think, number 1.
Yeah.
Plays a big role in that, but that's a hefty package, right? That's a 11th overall pick who is ready to step into pro hockey, maybe into the NHL, and a 15th overall pick. There's going to be good players. There's going to be good players sitting there at 15. Some worthwhile centers, some defensemen. It's like there's going to be teams that would look at that package and be like, yeah, we'll give you a second line center. And now for the Canucks, it's like everything I've said it a million times. All roads lead to keeping Quinn happy. You probably want to know if Quinn's going to be happy for more than 2 years, though, before you start mortgaging your future. Because if you move out Tom Willander, like how long can you rely on Tyler Myers to play top 4 minutes for you, right? Like how long is that going to be able? And he's really rejuvenated his career in the last couple of years. I think he's been excellent in the role he's played for them, but you can't keep asking that for him year over year. And so now you're like, okay, Victor Mancini, you have to be a top 4 guy, and then we have to start just filling in gaps on that bottom pair, and it's just. You're setting yourself up. You've spent that draft capital on an 11th overall pick for a reason. I think it would be short-sighted to move him, but again, would not surprise me if that is the end result.
Let's go to the apple of my eye. Marco Rossi. Do you pay that price for Marco Rossi? And do the Wild want to do that deal because they're trying to be good next year?
Guys, I don't think the Wild like Marco Rossi. I do not think that
I've been of that mind too. Yes.
Right? They clearly do not envision him as like a long-term top 6 center option for them. And they're a good team, right? And they don't have an abundance of top 6 centers. It's not like they have a ton of them floating around, right? It's
and
like,
Willander in this pick don't make them better next year.
No, it doesn't. And to be honest with you, like their defense is so stacked up too, right? And they have Faber and they have Zebuyam and they have assets. They have David Jurasek. They don't need Tom Willander. So I don't think that on paper that makes sense for them. But again, I would not be surprised if Marco Rossi moves. I actually kind of expect him to move this summer.
Why do you say that, Ken? Why do you say you don't think they like Marco Rossi?
They don't give him any time with Matt Boldy or with Kaprizov. They dropped him to the fourth line. We heard, I'm not sure if that was out there yet, but 5 by 5.5 was their contract offer to him, is what I was told, is what I'd heard when I was in Texas there. For a player with his pedigree and the production that he's put up, we just saw what Matt Coronado got. Some of these players that are not as good as him are getting bigger contracts, and so that just is telling to me is that management there in Minnesota isn't smitten on him, that they're like, yeah, we'll keep him around at a discount. And if you're not happy with that, well, then we'll ship you off and we'll get a win now piece. So it just doesn't seem like throughout the course of the last few years that they are enamored with Marco Rossi.
Okay, let me throw this in your pipe. The conventional wisdom is that Matthew Schaefer, the OHL defenseman, is the best player in this draft and the most likely to go first overall. The New York Islanders have that first overall after an amazing lottery win last night. They do not have a general manager, but they really do need to increase the excitement and entertainment value at UBS Arena. Is there any chance they go Michael Misa first overall, and does that make one of Bo Horvat or Matt Barzal more available than he would have otherwise been had the Islanders kept their indigenous pick?
I think that it's really interesting, and I haven't put this out there yet, is that I think that last night's lottery is like that there's this result. We could see like some real galactic brain action happening now. And so, yes, I do think that there's a world where Schaefer doesn't go one here because of who landed that pick. Now, they don't have anybody in their system like Matt Schaefer. So it makes a ton of sense for them to just take the best player, right? But we've heard, and also that we've heard that maybe, Noah Dobson isn't long for the Isle, right? So if they move out Dobson, it's like now they really have nobody on the blue line to move the puck for him. So it makes even more sense. But I'll give you one more name too, is that James Hagens is from Long Island. He grew up a diehard Islanders fan. Like they have a hard time keeping those homegrown, those homegrown talents that they draft and develop. Is like sometimes they want to leave, that they don't want to stay on the island. Do you take the kid who was, predicted to be the first overall pick all, last year and early on this season, who's slipped down to maybe 3 or 4 now, but they get the kid who...
Do you trade down? Do you try to have your cake and eat it too? Right? Trade down, get Hagens, and get something else.
Yeah.
Or do you take Matty Schaefer and then look to trade to get that 4th overall pick?
Yeah.
Right? Do you go ahead and be like Utah? Do you guys want Noah Dobson? And we'll take 4th, and now we can get best of both worlds. Like I think that there could be some real fun stuff that happened because of the way the lottery balls landed.
Can I ask a stupid question?
Sure.
Always.
Day that ends in Y.
No. Matthew Schaefer looks like a fine young hockey player. Don't get me wrong, but he's a left shot, not a right shot. Mm-hmm. He's 6'2", 185. He's not 6'4", 6'5", 2 something. Good offensive totals, but not great, in part because we didn't see him play much of this year after the injury. Misa's an exceptional player who had 62 goals in 65 games this year, playing down the middle, 134 points.
Yeah.
Why isn't Misa the number one prospect for you or for others?
So he's right there. It is 1-2 and then a gap. And so if you're going on positional need, there's a special quality with Schaefer. His skating is separating. It's a separating skill. And it will be at the NHL level. And
straight ahead speed. We're not talking Quinn Hughes skating. We're talking straight ahead speed.
No, we're talking 4-way mobility. He is now. He's not. He's not Quinn Hughes. And I said in Quinn Hughes' draft year that this is the best skater I've ever watched, and that was him at 17, 18 years old. He was the best skater I'd ever seen with the 4-way mobility. And so Schaefer's not quite that level, but he is not far off of it with his skating ability. His offensive generation, I think, is the point totals don't give it justice. Is that I think that this could be a player that on like a Stanley Cup contender, he will chew up 25 minutes a night, be a franchise defenseman for you, potentially win Norris trophies. He's that level of player. Michael Misa, very, very good player, very talented player. Not everybody's convinced he's going to be a center. Not everybody in NHL circles convinced he's going to be a center, but he is going to be a very, very good player on the wing, a first liner for sure, but maybe not one that changes the complexion of your roster.
Okay. The last time the Vancouver Canucks picked 15th overall was 3 years ago when they popped on Jonathan Lekramaki, and we had the conversation at the time, Cam. I believe you worked that draft for us. He kind of fell to them. He slid, and they were delighted to get him where they got him. The actual, authentic, genuine, we couldn't believe he was there. Yeah. Is there a guy who right now is looking like a top 10 prospect on most lists that has a chance to fall to the Canucks at 15? And barring that, who do you like at that selection?
I'm glad you framed it that way, because I was going to come in here with a name of that exact kind of fits that bill. And so there's a lot of good players that could be sitting there at number 15. You know, Brady Martin, I'm a big fan of his. He hits like a truck. He's a center. He scores goals. He's, just was one of the tournament all-stars of the U18s. Very good player. Keishon Aitchison, the left shot defenseman. I say Kevin Bieksa 2.0, smash mouth style, scores goals. Lots of good players. But there's one that I keep looking at that I think is going to slip on draft day that holds immense potential, and it's Roger McQueen. 6'5", pivot. Former like 4th overall pick in the West. He's older. He's an October birth date, so he's 18 all year. Started out like the roof was on fire. Just blew out of the gates, and then the injury. Okay, then he had a back injury, and now everybody's a little scared of what we just saw with Caden Lindstrom. Right, missed a big chunk of his draft eligible season, and now has missed the entirety of this season. Although I will say, full participant in Medicine Hat Tigers practice today as they get ready for their West final against the Spokane Chiefs. So it'd be great to see Lindstrom back in action. But everyone's a little gun shy after that, right? McQueen's got a back injury. He's a big guy, just like Lindstrom. I'm thinking this kid who has arguably top 2 potential on pure upside, that he could be slipping out of that top 10. If that slide starts to happen, I had one team tell me, if he's there where they were picking, and they are picking super, super high, he's like, we're still not taking him, because we'll be like, everybody knows something that we don't, and we're going to let that slide down past us as well. So there's a world where Roger McQueen, if he doesn't go at 5 or 6, that I think that tumble could go all the way down to 15. And then for Vancouver, a team like that picking in that zone, that's easy money. It's like, yes, it might not work out. He might have a back injury, might derail his entire career. But at 15, you take a chance on potentially getting like a first line center with his size and pedigree and skill set. Another one that could change the complexion of your franchise long term if you can get him at that spot.
I like it. You've got me almost ordering a McQueen Canucks jersey, except then I'm quelled by, what is that, a 5% chance the Canucks keep this pick? Where do you put it?
I think it's higher than that. I think someone has to buy the pick, right? That's a big part of this too, is that nobody loves this draft class. Nobody's enamored with this draft class. Now, if it's on the floor and you're at pick 14 and Roger McQueen's still sitting there, you might get a team that's like, hey, we'll take a swing on this giant right now. A playoff team who has extra parts that they can move, and be like, okay, we'll shift this player and we'll get your 15 and we'll take Tom Willander, and all of a sudden we've got ourselves Willander and Roger McQueen, and all we had to trade was this 28-year-old center that we could part with. So I could see that happening, but at the same time, it's like you do have to have buyers. So I think it's higher than 5%. I will, and maybe that's just my being naive that I do this for a living, and so it's better business for me to talk about prospects. But I do think it's higher than 5, maybe 6.
Did anybody at U18s win their way up this draft into this category? I know I saw lots of ink spilt on Boumediene. I know you were saying in the early 30s maybe for him, but anybody that has played.
Just love his name, Boumediene.
A Boumediene bomb? That's better than Bush bomb, I think. A boom bomb.
Boumediene. So no, nobody played their way up. And, Martin, I think, is probably the one who really helped his stock, that I could see him going top 10. He's always been kind of flirting around that 12-14 zone anyways. Cole Reshny's had just a tremendous back half of his entire season, and that kept going into the U18s too. But if anything, some of these guys that look like they are supposed to be top 10 picks look nothing like top 10 picks. Anton Fondell, huge disappointment.
Really?
Huge disappointment. Oh, gosh. And he's mostly disappointed me all year. But this was my first time finally getting eyes on him live, because he always tends to be injured for these international tournaments. But no, he didn't even look like a first rounder out there, let alone a top 5 pick. Jackson Smith, the talented 6'3" defenseman. didn't look like a top 10 pick. Radim Murtka, 6'6" defenseman, supposed to be a top 10 pick, did not look like a top 10
And
pick.
this isn't World Juniors. This is U18s. Like, this is when you're supposed to dominate your contemporaries.
Yeah, we got a kid, Phil Beckberg, who's going to go in the 4th round, who led the tournament, right? Like, he did wonders for his stock, and maybe now he'll go 95th instead of 125th.
Right,
But,
right.
yeah, no, not a lot of needle movers. 26, though, a lot of really great performances from the 2026 kids at this tournament.
Huh, okay.
Let's turn our attention to the Canucks coaching search, Cam, because there is a hot name out there amongst the assistant coaching ranks, and he's from Quesnel, British Columbia. I'm speaking of Washington Capitals assistant Mitch Love, just 40 years old, a former head coach of the Saskatoon Blades in the WHL, a longtime Hockey Canada assistant on the World Hockey Challenge, Helenka Gretzky, and even World Junior teams. And he's had a couple of bids as a head coach in the AHL as well. You know him a little bit. What do you think?
I mean, like you said, he's a BC boy. He didn't have a lengthy pro career. I love that when he was like 26 or something, he retired and immediately stepped onto the bench in the Western Hockey League. Like, he's just like, I'm not even going to take a minute off. I'm getting right into coaching. And you see that with some of these career coaches, is that's where they were always supposed to be. And they get identified early on. It's like, you could be a coach. He has success, right? He won a gold with the U17 there. Scotty Walker was the head coach. He was the assistant, right? They won the gold there. He's got a Helenka gold. He's got a juniors gold. He has all this experience internationally. He's young. You can relate better to these younger players when you're, not 65 years old, 70 years old. I think that he has a long career as a head coach ahead of him. Now, is this the time for him? Is this, he's got Spencer Carberry there in Washington. It's like, it's going to be difficult for him to get another, to steal that opportunity there. So it's, I'm sure he's going to be taking interviews and be looked at as kind of that next young coach to step in. David Carl's not coming now for a while. Teams that are looking to get away from that recycled job, save a little bit of money, don't have to pay the full freight on some of these guys. I think he'd be a very desirable option. I think he'd be a great option for the Canucks, to be honest with you.
Do you think the Canucks could sell a first-time, lightly known head coach in this market?
I mean, hey, if they can sell Bitcoin on Twitter there yesterday, they can sell anything, right?
Very well done. Good drop.
Well done.
Yes.
Oh, boy. Hey, they're taking L's everywhere. I tweeted it. They need a win. They need a win
They
so
need a
badly in any sense of the word.
If you buy this Bitcoin, it'll be a win.
Hey, has anybody checked Bitcoin? Maybe they are having a win.
The
right
best
now,
part
as
was
we
is that you
speak.
couldn't tell if it was a 100% hack job or not, right? Like, for a minute there, it's like, it's probably hacked, but
Probably a hack.
Probably hacked, but
Yeah.
no, I think they could. I think they could sell, because they could sell anything. They can sell anything in this market. To be, the market is they are desperate for whatever Vancouver, the Canucks will give them, and yes, I think they could sell that. I think it's Manny. I think Malhotra. I think they could sell Malhotra. I think that they could sell Mitch Love. If anything, what might get more pushback is a more experienced coach who's been around the block and has failed, right? Like, that might be harder to sell.
How bad would Adam Foote be?
I don't know. I don't think it would be bad. I don't think it would be bad. He was a great player, and I've heard good things about him as a coach. I think that would be a harder sell than Manny. I think Manny gets
It's the leanest resume by a country
right?
mile.
Exactly, right? Yeah. So I think that Malhotra and Mitch Love would be an easier sell as first time coaches. Yeah.
What about Woodcraft?
I like Jay Woodcraft. I think that he's a very intelligent guy, very shrewd hockey mind, and he got a raw deal in Edmonton. Like, he got a very raw deal. They're getting canned and whatever it was, 3 weeks into the season that year, for no reason other than they just needed to shift something up. And so, talking with kind of the people in the know is that he's going to get another chance, and he deserves another chance. And so I would be totally fine with Jay Woodcraft. He's a player's coach. But he's very shrewd thinking and forward thinking with that.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be interesting. They're casting a wide net. Interviews this week. We'll be hearing names attached to this vacancy, and I look forward to discussing it and the 15th overall selection with you as we go forward.
As long as they own it, yes.
You think you're going to own it by next Tuesday?
I think next Tuesday they own it.
All right. We'll talk to you next Tuesday.
Sounds good, boys. Take care.
Harrison Price from the historic Wall Center.
And right now you can extend your game night with a staycation in downtown Vancouver. Book a Sakaris price exclusive rate at the Wall Center here. Call the hotel 604-331-1000. Tell them Sakaris Price sent you. Some blackout dates may apply based on availability.
As we get into the golf report, brought to you by the Arnold Palmer designed Whistler Golf Club, opening Friday. And Blake, to be Jay Monahan or a honcho at the PGA Tour office in Ponte Vedra Beach, Florida Sunday, as Scotty Scheffler is romping to victory at the Byron Nelson in Texas, a PGA Tour record low score of 253 minus 31. He wins the tournament by 8 strokes. It was his first win of the season. Previously had 3 top 5s on the resume. And now, Blake, the tour has exactly what it wants heading into major season. A Rory McIlroy, Scotty Scheffler rivalry with both guys playing well.
We also have a guy who's now, I think it's top 8, I read, win percentage of all time on the PGA Tour. Like, he's way back in terms of total wins from guys like Tiger and Jack, but percentage-wise, he's up over 10%. Rory's just ahead of him, incidentally. Rory's got one of the best winning percentages of all times. But in terms of tour starts and tour wins, those two guys are historically amongst the greats. Now, we can have a conversation about fields for each of the players that are in that top 8 and how the tour has differed from era to era. And that is a valid conversation to have. I don't know that it diminishes its context, but nevertheless, everybody's playing under the same rules now. That is still pretty impressive, and those are the two guys that need to make the PGA Tour. And again, I go back to the same old water cooler test, Matt. When is the last time somebody walked up to you and said, did you see the live yesterday? And the blah, blah, blah happened. Right. Has never happened to me once. Did you see the finish to the tournament on the PGA Tour last week? Yes, I have had that conversation with people before. So,
question for you. What is the last great golf rivalry?
Tiger Phil was something.
Tiger Phil was something. The problem was, I believe it was 9 times they were paired together in the final round.
Yeah.
It wasn't a lot.
Tiger Sergio, we thought was something, didn't really end up being anything.
Kind of because Tiger was unrivaled.
That's the problem. He just demolished everybody.
Blake, I think you almost have to go back to Nicholas Watson. I mean, there were flash rivalries. Like at one point there, Rory and Brooks, maybe Rory and Bryson. But the problem is you only see them now at majors, right? Because they're live players. Tiger and Phil paired together twice at the Masters in the final round, 01 and 09. They finished 1-2-9 times. Sorry, they finished 1-2-9 times in their career. They weren't paired in 9 times. Finished 1-2-9 times in their career, but only once at a major, the 02 U.S. Open. In fact, some of their best head-to-head duels came at tour championships and at sort of run-of-the-mill events, more so than the ones that were in highlight. Tour championships are certainly something. So basically, we could be looking at something that a couple of generations of golf fans have not seen, and that is the two top players in the world going head-to-head down the stretch of major championships. And it could happen as soon as next week. You have the Truist Championship this week. It's formerly the Wells Fargo. It is usually at Quail Hollow Golf Club in North Carolina. It has been moved to the Philadelphia Cricket Club.
Which is going to be interesting because Rory normally owns that tournament, but when it's...
He's won it 3 times.
At Quail.
Quail is the host of the PGA Championship in a couple of weeks. And yeah, that is going to be the storyline. Scotty versus Rory for the second major of the 2025 golf season. And the Whistler Golf Club gets going Friday, this Friday, opening day. Spring preparations are almost complete here, and they're accepting online bookings for the entirety of the 2025 season. No need to wait. Get those times locked in. And if you do have a group of 12 or more and you're planning a 2025 visit, Get those times on hold right now. The prime times always fill up quickly. And tell them about your group, whistlergolf.com/groups. Follow on social at Whistler Golf.
They never dueled a whole lot, but Norman versus Nicholas was a thing because it was the old guy versus the young guy.
A little bit.
But they didn't really have any historic duels.
Norman Faldo, and of course Greg
Yeah.
collapsing that year at the Masters, and Nick comes roaring back to win it.
Yeah. It was really Norman versus himself as one of the greatest rivalries.
Phil versus himself, too.
Yeah, that too.
Those were great rivalries. Whitecaps. So we mentioned yesterday how much love this team is getting across MLS and U.S. soccer circles, and let's face it, because they're undeniable, because they have forced themselves into the conversation, they would be happily ignored by most U.S. soccer journalists. Alas, not the case. I watched an MLS panel show yesterday, Blake. Tristan Blackman was getting love. He's on the MLS Team of the Week as perhaps Defender of the Year. And, of course, Pedro Vite is getting MVP shine. And the guys also mentioned Jesper Sorensen may already have Coach of the Year locked up here in May after just 11 matches. Because of the Whitecaps' incredible start. They're back at it Sunday at BC Place, 4 p.m. versus LAFC. Quite a story here, Vancouver Whitecaps FC.
Well, and I was looking at, do you know JC Ngondo has 4 assists already on the season?
Yeah.
Like if you have 8 or more assists on a year, like you are a contributor in Major League Soccer.
Oh, yeah.
JC Ngannou's halfway there. Like he could have a double-digit assist
And he's
season.
a bench player.
He's a bench player.
Yep.
It's
remarkable.
It really is.
Vancouver Canadians back at it tonight in Spokane. Home a week from today for a 6-game set against Everett. And by that time, Blake, they may well boast the number 1 and number 2 Toronto Blue Jays prospects. We've told you all about Arjun Nimala, the shortstop, 19-year-old shortstop who has taken the Northwest League by storm, has led the Loop in home runs. He's in a battle there. And Ross Atkins, Blue Jays general manager, on the weekend, he scrummed and he told reporters Trey Yasavage, the number 2 Blue Jays prospect, will be promoted to Vancouver soon. He's the 20th overall pick from last June's draft, a big right-hander. He's pitched to a 2.31 ERA and a 0.90 whip in 5 Dunedin starts. He was the Florida State League Pitcher of the Week, and he may well be joined shortly thereafter by the Blue Jays' second-round pick last year, Cal Steven, a big right-hander from Mississippi State. He's got a 1.82 ERA and a 0.94 whip in 6 starts for the Dunedin Blue Jays. So it's starting to get pretty prospecty around the seas. Get your tickets, 604-872-5232 or CanadiansBaseball.com. Of course, they have the Nooner next week on the Friday, and Women in Sports Day with a guest appearance from Hazel May on Saturday, May 17th at the Nat. Sunday, bobblehead giveaway. So get yourself to the Nat next week. Good night for the NBA. Really good night for the NBA. And a very intriguing start to round 2. We had disparaged round 1. It wasn't great. There were a lot of blowouts, a couple sweeps. They got 2 Game 7s, and then those games weren't particularly close. But all 3 road teams have won the opener here, with Indiana winning in Cleveland, and then the Knicks getting over on the Celtics, and Denver pulling that game off in Oklahoma City last night. Denver, the championship pedigree. They make the plays down the stretch, come back to beat OKC. And the Knicks as well ain't going quietly against the defending champion Boston Celtics. And I was just thinking, Knicks, Celtics, I mean, what a brand matchup that is, right?
Yeah.
I mean, those are 2 of the 3 big brands in the NBA, right? Lakers being the other.
Well, and I'm a pretty good litmus test. I used to be a huge NBA fan, and I'm just not anymore. And so I sort of judge how big the NBA is based on how much I am intrigued by it, how much I'm brought into it as a casual now.
Your boy watches a little, though.
No, not anymore. No,
Okay.
no, not so much anymore. So, Knicks and Celtics kind of brings you to the yard a little bit.
For sure. For sure.
It's an important rivalry to have.
Especially if that series gets street tough, and that series may get street tough. Surrey Mitsubishi poll question results from Monday ask you, should the Canucks just let Quinn Hughes choose the next coach? People said?
People said no.
They said yes.
Really?
58%.
Wow.
Lots of great comments. I love going through the comments when they're amusing. KB, absolutely not. This is ridiculous. Yeah, I understand. Kango, maybe we should all bow down to Quinn Hughes' greatness and make him part owner of the Vancouver Canucks as well. We could also change the team name to the Vancouver Quins. All jokes aside, the Quinn Hughes infatuation is getting ridiculous.
Okay, I was with this person up until the last sentence. The Quinn Hughes infatuation is justified. He is one of the top players to ever wear, in over 50 years of his existence, the Vancouver Canucks uniform. It's not an infatuation. It's a protection of a rare mineral. Like, you have to protect it.
BCB says only if it means he signs an extension. T says the only option is to hire his dad. Other than that, it makes no difference. He's gone. James, let's be real.
Hire Jimmy. I don't mind that approach.
James, let's be real. Quinn has as good a chance at picking someone as the front office. Leo, next coach, color of seats, beers, food in the concession, all of it. Just ask Quinn, what kind of food do you want at the concession? Well, I'm kind of on the bench. I don't really consume. What do you want to provide your guests? Your 18,000 guests.
Stan Smeal's got a hot dog joint. Why can't Quinn have something around?
And then David says, yep, the NHL is turning into the NBA more and more each day. LeBron picked the coach.
Yep.
Errors and omissions from yesterday's program and beyond. We were wondering about Ilya Mikheyev's trade protection. And he did, in fact, have a modified no trade clause from the Vancouver Canucks upon his deal to the Chicago Blackhawks. It was a 12-team no trade list. Anything from the inbox? Anything from Yerke? Anything to self-report?
No. Other than people pointed out the error of Canucks Twitter overall being hacked and such.
Thanks for joining us, everybody. Appreciate you spending some time connecting with the program. Please do subscribe to all our assorted channels. YouTube. Blake would really like you to subscribe to YouTube.
Please.
And wherever you get your podcast, follow on social, X, Insta, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Blue Sky. We are live on many of those platforms, noon Pacific time, weekdays. And, of course, support the community sponsors you hear us telling you about. And keep it local.